Alright, and here we are, just on Twitch. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're coming here from YouTube, I do apologize. But we have found ourselves... Thanks for the follow. I can't imagine who that is. Alright, so we have found ourselves in the ruins of Artemis. Where we are now is in the Mammalian Gulf. We have this nice little hook. It looks like an inverted Cape Cod. This is where the Persian army first comes, right? So they're coming north over here through Thrace and then Macedonia. This is where Alexander the Great will show up 150 years later. But here we are in Melis, and we're going to make our way down this way. Here is where Thermopylae is, and then we're going to spend some time running around in Focus. Ooh, and we might even see the Oracle of Delphi, but we may also wait a couple weeks to check out her and her crazy, future telling. So here we go. These are some cool ruins. It looks like these are ruins to Artemis, right? So we have a little shrine here. Bow and arrow are famously for... Hello, Vagilus. I'm so glad that you made it. Here is the temple of the golden-bowed goddess, and here she is with her hind or deer. Here's Artemis herself with the golden bow. Oh my goodness, there is a bear. Oh my goodness, and someone. I wonder if this person. Okay, I'm sure in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you'll be able to interact with these people. Oh my god, what is this person doing? But in the meantime, I can't do anything with them. So it looks like someone has taken a serious blow to this temple. It could be Xerxes, right? As Xerxes and his legions march across Greece, they are going to... they destroy a number of temples. You can't hear. Oh my goodness. Oh, it's pausing constantly. There should be nothing else. I am teaching a class. This is so sad. I'm so sorry that that the streams are... it's not working today. Let's see. Okay, well, if it's fine for some people, then I'm gonna hope that it's fine for everyone. Jocko, it looks like your Wi-Fi is killed. I do apologize. Do let me know if the sound's bad, if the recording's off, anything like that. Oh my god, another bear. Of course, unlike the people in the village, I can't push them around. Okay, thank you so much for letting me know. Again, apologize for the apologies for the interruption so far. Hopefully, we get this show on the road. As you can tell, so here we are in Melis. I believe if I hold Z, I'll follow the road. So while this guy follows the road, here is this narrow pass that is going to become increasingly more treacherous as we get towards Thermopylae. Right, so on the right-hand side, to the north, we have these steep mountain passes, and over here, this is called the Mammalian Gulf. And we can actually see ahead of us, this is the pass of Thermopylae. So you're going to be able to see from afar these very steep slopes that are going to prevent the encirclement. And so as Xerxes marches his way this way, towards Thermopylae, I am from the US. Yes, I'm from California. As Xerxes marches his army, which Herodotus says is 5 million or 1.7 million regular soldiers, it's probably in the hundreds of thousands, potentially just 100,000. But his main strength is the fact that he has emptied all of Asia to to bring his soldiers to attack Greece. Oh, do we want to go this way or do we want to cross? Let me just check. I think we want to go this way. I'm glad I caught that. So his main advantage is going to be the sheer number of troops he's bringing, and they're fine troops, right? He would be able to crush any Asian army. However, in Greece, he's up against heavily armored hoplites, and oh, come on, you can climb this wall. No, you can't. Apparently not. Even assassins are stymied by good palisades. So the heavily armored hoplites in the narrow confines of Thermopylae are going to cause a major problem for him, as we shall see. Asia meets Europe. Pictorial of the Dardanelles frontier between Europe and Asia. The Greeks had always distinguished Europe, where they had settled, from Asia. They reckoned it began with the far side of the Aegean Sea and extended well beyond to Persia and India. But beyond pure geography, the Persian invasion gave a political significance to the distinction between Asia and Europe. So, let's check this out. This is, let's just take a look at this map real quick. We have Europe, we have Asia, so we're looking north. This is the Hellespont, the Dardanelles, the Bosporus. Interesting. Or I guess we're looking west, because this is, that's Constantinople over there, so that's the Bosporus. And then this is honestly kind of hard to read. And then these are the very narrow straits. The very narrow straits that separate the two continents. So in the area of Constantinople between Turkey and the Balkans, there are two sets of straits that are basically a mile wide. It enables very easy interaction, but also the polis, the city-states, the civilizations that grow up around those areas have very good choke points to either protect or choke off the trade that goes between the Black Sea, as well as the terrestrial trade, the land-based trade that goes between Europe and Asia. Herodotus writes of two worlds, Asia dominated by the Persian Empire and Europe, by which he actually means the Greek world. This is particularly notable at the time of the passage of the Dardanelles by the Persian army. They call them the Dardanelles. So we call this area the Hellespont, as does Herodotus. While Greece is still quite a few hundreds, still a few hundreds of kilometers away, Herodotus quotes Xerxes as saying, "Let us enter into Europe after having prayed to the gods who reign over the land of the Persians." He passes radically from one world to the other, from one civilization to the other. Texts describe Asia as a barbarous country, but we must be careful that the word does not have the meaning of today. It simply means that the spoken language is incomprehensible to the Greeks, without implying a judgment of value. Okay. The Greeks definitely did judge the barbarians, and the famous story is that barbarians are those people whose tongue sounds like a bar 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 bar. Okay, Ari, thank you so much for coming. I'm glad that you made it here. Ooh, we got a new reward. We're gonna go as Alexios Achilles, or we could do an Athenian woman. Let me know in the chat, do you want Athenian woman, also a new find, or Alexios Achilles, who looks pretty dope? Oh my god. Ari, classic, blowing up the chat. Ari, this is about ancient Greece, not your ex. But yes, I actually can believe that. So here we are in an Athenian camp up in the Mammalian Gulf. This is probably from the time of the Peloponnesian War, about 50 years after the Persian invasions, right? Otherwise, the Athenians are probably not going to be this far up. There is I wonder if we're even going to be able to see it. So there is at the same time as Thermopylae, there's a Greek holding force on sea over here. All right, we got a vote for Athenian women. So we'll do that. But there's an Athenian holding force here, Athenian and a number of other Greeks. This is at a place called Artemisium. And so the same thing happens, essentially, which is there's a very narrow strait, and that's where they decide to choke off the much larger area. Persian force. And what we'll see time and time again is that the Persian numbers work against them in the terrain of Greece. So while in Asia and the plains, what would it be important to take notes on? Anything you find interesting. So on Wednesday, there's going to be, in fact, I was just about to say some important things to take notes on. So on Wednesday, you guys are going to be reenacting Thermopylae on Roll20, and so I would take notes on anything that you think is an important note about how the Greeks defeated the Persians. Right, you're going to want to employ strategies, and in fact, if you employ historical strategies in our game day in class, you will be able to have you will get advantages on your rolls. No, this is probably my only actual follower, not a student. Yeah, so you guys have yeah, you guys have a dope curriculum. Honestly, I'd love to teach over there because ancient Greece is my jam, at least for now. So here we go. We're going to zoom up, and as we see the plains, this is a large beach where historically the Persian force is going to land its troops. As we talked about in class last week, one of the main problems of the Persian invasion is that they are not going to have an easy time beaching their ships, right? So in the late summer, when their invasion happens, there are a number of storms that come in. They're called Hellesponters, and they wreck a number of these ships because they don't have a safe place to land. So, oh, here we go. Let's go here first. And so, yeah, so one of the things that you want to think about in class is how can you make Xerxes' army, the military size he has, the supposedly 1,200 triremes and 5 million men. It's going to be less than that, realistically. But how can you make those numbers work against him? There's a reason that Greece and Greek military and Greek warfare has small numbers, and part of that's the geography. So here at Thermopylae, we're going to see how those numbers will work against the Great King. Nope, no. Damn horse, trying to drown me. Can't do that. Okay, can I get out of here? How sad. Oh, it would be so sad if this is how she meets her end. No, Athenian woman, you can do it. Come on, there we go. All right, our horse is a goner. Let's be real, that horse is not getting out of here. Persia on the move. Persian king, quiver on shoulder. Let's check this guy out. Xerxes went to spectacular lengths to ensure the passage of his army from Asia Minor into Greece. For example, he made a bridge of boats to cross the Straits of the Dardanelles, 12 kilometers long. This bridge was barely finished when a storm destroyed it. Furious, Xerxes ordered that the sea be punished with 300 lashes and branded, and chains be thrown into the bottom of the ocean. We read the Herodotus last week in class. Right, he brands it, and he has like chosen people, like high-ranking Persian officials, insult the river, or sorry, not the river, the sea, and he calls it something. It's like, you briny, turgid river, damn you. I think that's what our translation says. So, and then he builds another bridge. I actually think that the first bridge was an actual bridge. The second bridge was a pontoon bridge on boats. I think that's how he figured it was going to survive better against the winds and the storms, and of course all the tidal movements. Xerxes also dug a canal at the entrance of the eastern peninsula of Athos. Rounding the promontory of Athos, which has a height of more than 2,000 meters, can prove extremely dangerous in the event of a storm, as shown by the catastrophe that struck a Persian fleet in 492 BC. So before the Battle of Marathon, the first attempt at invasion was led by a guy named Mardonius. He went he brought his troops on ships, and as they rounded one of the Chalkidiki peninsulas, a storm rolled off the mountains and smashed into it, killing thousands of men, and that essentially ended the first attempt at invasion. Xerxes had a channel of some 2 kilometers long constructed using detachments of all the peoples of the army and by the inhabitants of the region who dug under the threat of the whip. Herodotus saw it as a manifestation of pride more than a work of public utility. It would have sufficed, he says, to build a kind of wooden rail on which the vessels would have been drawn, as done for the Isthmus of Corinth. So let's take a look at what he's talking about. Herodotus is talking about... Herodotus is talking about over here. This is Mount Athos. Oh, here we go. There's a fast travel location that we could have started at. But the ships went around here, and as they crossed this point of the peninsula, a storm destroyed them. So they built a canal up here so that the ships wouldn't have to do that. Herodotus calls this an act of hubris. Hubris being the mortal flaw that it's, as the Assassin's Creed translated it to, it's pride, thinking that you are above or better than the gods, or equal, even just equal to the gods. And this hubris provokes divine wrath. So here we are down by the coast, and let's climb up these high cliffs. So at the Isthmus of Corinth, so if we go down here, Corinth is a major trading hub. Instead of a canal, because canals are incredibly difficult to build in the ancient world, they had a lot of shaped wood tree logs, and you'd haul the boat out of the water and roll it across this entire isthmus. The bridge initially got destroyed, and so they built a second one. The engineers of the first bridge were executed, and the waters were punished, as we saw, or as we heard from this. So here we go. We're going to get up to the main battlefield of Thermopylae. Let's take a bird's eye view of this. Here we have, this is actually Leonidas's, I don't think it's a tomb, but it's a memorial. So this is set after the Battle of Thermopylae. This lion represents Leonidas. Leo meaning, thanks for tuning in, Ari. Leo meaning lion, both in Greek and in Latin. But as you can see, so the ships would land here, the armies would camp in this big plain, and then they would be funneled in here. And so right before we begin, I want to read a quote, another little excerpt from Persian Fire, a great book about this, that describes the lead up to the battle. For the defenders of Thermopylae, gazing in horror across the bay, right? This is the bay that we're looking at. Gazing in horror across the bay at all the great king's hordes, there was an order beyond their darkest imagining. On and on the din of their progress, now thunderous, shimmering in and out of view, borne upon rolling breakers of choking dust, the barbarians advanced. To the Greeks, wiping grit from their watering eyes, feeling the earth beneath them shiver, for hour after ceaseless hour, the reports of the 3 spies sent to Sardis who had spoken of Asia being emptied, and of millions being mustered against them, must have seemed horrifically confirmed. Panic began to grip the tiny army, all except the Spartans, that is, who maintained their customary composure. All right. So, the hordes of Asia have been emptied, and here we are. We're going to meet Leonidas.
Welcome, visitor, to Thermopylae.
See you tomorrow.
Thermopylae was where a courageous group of Spartans stood amongst other Greek soldiers and held off the forces of King Xerxes, the Persian. When you're done, find me and we'll speak more.
So Leonidas, of course, is the Spartan king who becomes famous for this Battle of Thermopylae. So we see him throughout. He's the tour guide leader of a lot of areas in Laconia, which is the homeland of Sparta. But of course, this is the field of his greatest glory.
The Persian king Darius's cries of rage echoed for years after his humiliating defeat at Marathon. Even after Darius's death, his son Xerxes continued to seek vengeance against the Greeks. According to Aeschylus, Asia was emptied of all its men, Greek spies brought the news of Xerxes' imminent invasion back to their homeland. Afterwards, many discussions were had on the best place to mount a defense. In the end, the Greeks decided on Thermopylae.
Yeah, look at that.
The
Look at that
area
gate.
featured a narrow pass that could act as a bottleneck for the Persian army, negating their numerical superiority. It also offered naval advantages, offering the Greek fleets opportunities for flanking. 5,000 Peloponnesian Greeks set up at a fort near the entrance of the narrow passage, otherwise known as the Hot Gates. Leading them was Leonidas, a Spartan king who prided himself on supposedly being a direct descendant of Heracles. Leonidas was accompanied by several elite soldiers who together made up the famous 300 Spartans.
So a little bit to unpack there. The Oracle of Delphi said that essentially Xerxes is going to come and whoop your butt unless a king dies, unless Sparta is mourning a king. Yeah, this game does have a mode like this, so that's why I'm doing it, right? Basically taking my lectures out of the classroom and putting it onto a game where they can see, where these students can see the geography, what this time period looks like. Oh, Leonidas, very nice. I'm beginning to learn Greek, so Vagilis, the more Greek you put in the chat, the better I'll get. So I do appreciate it, though I may be asking you for some help. The Battle of Marathon during the first Persian invasion of Greece taught the Greeks that they were stronger when united. Yes and no. At Marathon, it's only two city-states. It's Athens and Plataea. The main fear, of course, is going to be that some Greek city-states will turn on the others. It's especially against the hundreds of thousands of Asians coming in. The Greeks need a united front, because if they're going to be stabbed in the back, they're in big trouble. With Xerxes' forces fast approaching, many cities gathered in Corinth, where they decided for the first time in their history to unite and form a common army. They called this the Pan-Hellenion, and what came out of it was known as the Pan-Hellenic League. So this is the lead up. We can see this choke point, that the lands are getting narrower and narrower. The fleet is going to be out of sight. It's actually going to be out here. In the movie 300, the storm, it seems like the Navy is much closer, but there is a storm here that is going to wreck the ships that have been supplying the Persian troops. And that happens right before the battle begins.
The Persian army arrived in the summer of 480 BCE, preceded by a flood of rumors regarding their strength and numbers. It was claimed they consumed 6,000 tons of wheat every day, and that they dried every river and brook they passed to quench their near insatiable thirst. During their march to Thermopylae, the Persians faced no opposition, and in fact increased their numbers further by recruiting more soldiers from other Greek cities and places like Thrace. According to Herodotus, the last count of the Persian fleet was numbered at 1,207 boats, mounted by approximately 240,000 men. He estimates the land army, meanwhile, was made up of more than 1 million men. The Greek forces at Thermopylae were heavily outnumbered.
Yeah, so we're talking hundreds of thousands versus about 4,000. When did the Persian army arrive? So this is going to take place in 480. So if we look at the map, as the Persians go through Macedon, Thrace, etc., they are recruiting troops because all of these areas have given earth and water to them. They have bent the knee. They have decided to join forces. And this is one of the reasons that the Persians are so successful as an empire, is that they ask for capitulation. They give you the option: earth, give us earth and water, pay us taxes, give us troops, and we will rule you generously. They were a very soft-handed or light-handed imperial ruler. Unlike most conquerors or most empires that are just going to be like, we're going to come and we're going to wreck you, we're going to burn all your stuff down, then we're going to loot and take all your stuff back with us. So the Persians gave everyone the opportunity at first to join them voluntarily. According to Herodotus, the main weaknesses of the Persian army were that they lacked superior defensive equipment and were not as well trained as the Greeks. The Persians excelled at fighting on vast, flat terrain, but were less effective in mountainous and wooded regions. The Greek strategists used this to their advantage, trying to lure the Persians to fight on unfavorable terrain. This is the view of Thermopylae from the past, let's see, like 100, 150 years ago. And so as you can tell, the ocean has receded about 2 miles. So if you look on Google Maps, you're going to be very disappointed because this no longer exists. This incredibly tight defense. Instead, it's a much larger flat plain. The Persians are, as they mentioned, used to fighting in very wide open spaces where their cavalry have full room to maneuver. They're also coming much less well armored. They rely on a lot of arrow fire. Arrow fire is not very helpful against Greeks in their full panoply with their shield and their really tightly armored core. So arrows are very inefficient when attacking hoplites.
Xerxes believed that at the sight of his massive army, the Greeks at Thermopylae would flee in terror. Instead, they deliberated. The majority of the Peloponnesians wanted to engage the Persians on the Isthmus of Corinth. Leonidas, meanwhile, believed it was wiser to stay put in Thermopylae. While the Greek forces debated, a Persian horseman was sent to spy on the enemy. He returned to Xerxes with surprising news. Not only were the Greeks not fleeing, but the Spartans guarding the fort were exercising and combing their hair. A far cry from the fearful soldiers Xerxes expected. To increase the pressure on the Greeks, Xerxes waited 4 more days, then attacked on the 5th. The Persians faced heavy resistance and suffered many losses, and Herodotus says Xerxes leaped 3 times from his chair, seized with fear for his army. The following day proved to be just as difficult for the Persian forces, and the Greeks continued to stand their ground.
The posters are, I don't know if you know the YouTube channel Kurtzgesagt, but every year they put out a poster of their animation style. They do really cool like science. They do some like philosophy stuff, mostly science, some history, and so yeah, I got their posters back there behind me. This is all from their like spacefaring year. I think this was 2021. So there's like mining Venus, gas, living in a gas planet, stuff like that. It's super cool. Okay, so the Peloponnesians, right from this Peloponnesian peninsula down here, they wanted to defend the Isthmus of Corinth, basically for the same reason that we want to fight here in Thermopylae, right? This is a choke point. Same thing with the Isthmus of Corinth. But then everyone from Phocis down to Attica is like, yo, dog, what are you doing? You're just leaving us out to dry. So Leonidas, taking the cue to defend all of Greece, leads in his 300 bodyguards to Thermopylae to try and rally the entire Hellenic population behind them. So during this time, I think this is happening in August, the Spartans are celebrating the Carneia. And what does this mean? The Carneias are too busy frolicking naked to send out an army. And so Leonidas kind of bends the rules a little bit. He has 300 soldiers in his bodyguard, and he replaces them with men who have children or have sons who can carry on his legacy, because he knows he's embarking on what is likely a suicide mission. And so instead of taking the ritualistic step of declaring war and marching an army, he takes a walk with his 300 bodyguards up to Thermopylae to fight. So this is not technically sanctioned, but it's getting out of the very strict conservative religious values of the Spartan population. Xerxes was the son of Darius, the king who ordered the first Persian invasion of Greece, an invasion that proved unsuccessful. Xerxes himself became king around 486 BC, shortly after he stopped revolts in both Egypt and Babylon, consolidating his power. As we remember, after Darius was defeated, Darius' generals were defeated at Marathon, he started preparing for another invasion. That force had to be redirected towards Egypt and Babylon because those are far more important areas, far richer areas of the Persian Empire than, piddling Greece. With his subjects now in line, Xerxes set out to invade Greece, presumably to avenge the humiliation his father had suffered at the hands of the Greeks. I believe that was like the rationale that George W. Bush gave for invading Iraq. He was like, well, my dad didn't get the job done, so I gotta do it.
The Persians seemed poised to be held at Thermopylae indefinitely, until an inhabitant from the region came forward with information. He told the Persians of another route which could take them around Thermopylae. A Persian contingent was sent to verify the information. While there were Greek soldiers stationed to guard the route, they were forced to flee from the Persians. Thus, on the third day of the battle, the Greeks were surrounded by their enemy.
So, yeah, of a shepherd. That damn shepherd. So this guy's name was Ephialtes. So this battle is 3 days long. They were hoping to hold out longer because they did not expect anyone to tell the king how to get around. And they had stationed 4,000 Phocians. Phocians are natives of the region. Let's see, can I get up here? I want to see if we can find the goat path. So you can kind of see how you might be able to get around. It's hard for me because I have assassin skills, so everything's passable by me. But this is where, I think it's Hydarnes is a relative of the king, and he's in charge of the Immortals, right? The Immortals are the 10,000 picked troops. They are the top echelon of the Persian army, and they're called the Immortals because as soon as one of them dies, there's another group of 10,000 who are training to be their replacements. So there are always 10,000 of them. And so the Immortals were brought by this shepherd named Ephialtes around the back. Vagilus, what does Ephialtes mean in modern Greek? This is the name, if you're still around, this is the name of the the Greek goatherd who, for a large sum of money, betrayed the Greeks. We'll read to the end of this, and then I'll tell you the answer. Demaratus was a Spartan king who exiled himself to Persia, where he was welcomed into Xerxes' entourage. Okay, not quite. Demaratus was a Spartan king. He was co-kings with Cleomenes, and Cleomenes, as we've seen, is it is Nightmare. Isn't that dope? Ephialtes, the name of the shepherd, is now the word that Greeks use for nightmare. Now maybe this is the case that that's the name that comes down to us, right? He is a nightmare, and it's not actually what he was named, but I like to think that the word for nightmare came from this traitor to the Greek cause in 480 BC. Anyway, so Demaratus was the co-king of Cleomenes, and he was exiled. He didn't exile himself. He was exiled because Cleomenes had the Oracle of Delphi bribed to say that Demaratus's lineage was illegitimate, that his dad was not actually the Spartan king, and that his mom had dallied with someone wrong. Not quite who she was married to. It's possible that Demaratus was born premature. It's also possible, not likely, that she, as she said, was visited by a hero, an immortal hero or god in the middle of the night, and that's who Demaratus' daddy actually is. When Xerxes' forces were still in Asia Minor, the Persian king asked Demaratus if the Greeks would dare resist his massive army. To Xerxes' surprise, Demaratus told him that while Greece was a poor country, it was just, wise, and courageous. He also commented that the Spartans specifically would never flee and fight until they died. Upon hearing this, Xerxes erupted into laughter. However, Demaratus' words would be proven true at Thermopylae. Yes, I'm going to turn the sound a little bit down. Music seems a little loud. But Yeah, so Demaratus, he was the last one laughing, and really Leonidas was. Um, Xerxes can't believe that these Greeks would face them. There's a big tension in Herodotus, where it's about free versus slave, and so Xerxes is really portrayed as a slave master, driving his people by the whip forward, whereas the Greeks are free Greeks fighting in defense of their homeland, fighting in defense of civil rights that they have, and there's a whole reason for this that I'm happy to go into, but the thought that these people would face death was absurd to Xerxes. He thought that they would just flee before him. Of course, his own troops they run to their deaths over and over and over again in these 3 days of carnage. You know, it becomes a slaughter where the hoplite phalanx is unbending, unbreakable, and tens of thousands of men from the Persian side will die breaking themselves against the Spartan shields.
With the Persians both in front of and behind them, the Greek forces at Thermopylae realized they had 2 choices: flee to live another day, or stand and fight till their last breath. Most of the Greeks chose the former option, but some stayed, including Leonidas and his 300 Spartans. For the Spartans, dying a glorious death was one of the highest honors they could achieve. The few members of Leonidas's Spartans who did not participate in the last stand at Thermopylae felt that they had missed an opportunity for honor and either committed suicide or continued living under the mockery and disgust of their fellow citizens. The Spartans' last stand was not only for glory, though. Had they not held off the Persians, the Greeks' retreating forces would probably have been cut down by enemy horsemen.
Yeah, so actually we'll read this and then I'll fill in the blanks. While the fighting went on at Thermopylae, a Greek fleet held off more Persians in a naval battle north of Euboea. This is a battle of Artemision. The fleet used small boats to maintain a connection with the land forces at Thermopylae. The battle started out in the Greeks' favor, mostly because a violent storm destroyed a large number of the Persian ships. However, after hearing the news of the defeat at Thermopylae, the Greek fleet withdrew to Attica. These are the arms of the hoplite. This is the cuirass, the helmet, the aspis or hoplon. Yeah. So the 300. This is why we have this idea in our mythology of the 300 Spartans, is because they stayed and all died, along with 1,000 Phocians, I believe, who are maybe they're not. It's not the Phocians. There's 1,000 more from the Peloponnese and 1,000 from Thebes. Thebes was a Greek polis that we will see a little later on. It's down here, and they had Medized, or they were threatening to. It seemed likely that they were going to turn their tail and join the Persian army. So Leonidas held them on basically as hostages, and they gave themselves up to Xerxes as soon as the Spartans had all perished. But the 300 did act as a holding force as the rest of the Greeks, the other, say, 3,000, were able to retreat back to safety. So they would have fled down this way into Boeotia, through Phocis into Boeotia, if possible, though the Persian cavalry were coming quickly on behind them. You can ask me any questions, but I'm gonna keep moving.
On the morning of the 3rd day, King Xerxes was assured of his victory. However, that victory did not come easy. King Leonidas himself fell in battle, and a furious fight broke out around his body. The Spartans fought to the last man, and when they had all been slain, Leonidas's body was brought before Xerxes. According to Herodotus, Persians usually honored the most courageous warriors, even if they were enemies. However, Xerxes was so consumed by rage at the Spartans' resistance that instead he cut off Leonidas's head and ordered it impaled on a stake. A statue of a lion was later erected on the hill of the Spartans' last stand, in honor of Leonidas's bravery.
Yeah, so there's a pitched battle. Herodotus talks about at the very end, after their spears had splintered, their swords shivered. If they didn't even have their daggers left, these Spartans were clawing with their hands and their teeth, both to try to recover Leonidas' body and then to kill any last person they could. As they mentioned, there were two, potentially three survivors. Two of them had an eye disease that they couldn't see. One of them decided to stay and just he asked his helot retainer, right, essentially his slave helper, to lead him into battle where he died. The other guy made his way back home to Sparta. When it became known that he had retreated, when another guy with the same eye disease had died in battle, everyone called him the Trembler and didn't talk to him at all. He later Herodotus talks about him running full on into the fray at Plataea, the final battle of the war, and dying gloriously there. So he brings honor back to his name after retreating in disgrace from Thermopylae. The Greeks would often consult the oracle at Delphi before major events. The oracle's prophecies were usually written afterwards in verse, although it's extremely unlikely she actually spoke in such a manner when delivering them. Regardless, the following is what the oracle is said to have told the Spartans on the eve of the Persian invasion. For you, inhabitants of wide-wayed Sparta, either your great and glorious city must be wasted by Persian men, or if not, then the bound of Lacedaemon must mourn a dead king. From Heracles' line, right? This is why Leonidas saw himself as needing to die in battle because of this. And it's likely, as they say, that the oracle's huffing vapors, talking in tongues, maybe like parcel tongue or something, because she is the Pythia, right, from Python, and then someone, a priest, is going to interpret this, and he's probably a guy who's got full on. And so this line was erected in Leonidas' honor, or not that exact line, but a line. And so he's probably attuned to what's going on in Greece, and he's going to try to hedge his bets, right? He's going to try to give a prognosis or prognostication that in such a way that multiple outcomes are possible.
Though they were victorious, the Battle of Thermopylae shook the morale of the Persian army. They had lost thousands of men, while Greek casualties only numbered in the hundreds, and due to the sacrifice of the Spartans, the rest of the Greek army had been able to successfully retreat and regroup. As a result, even as Xerxes set up camp at the foot of Athens' Acropolis, ready to get revenge for his father's humiliating defeat at Marathon, the Persians were more anxious than confident. They were more aware than ever that the Greeks did not fear them, and were ready to die defending their land.
Yeah, there did usually used to be lions, and actually what's really cool about this game is you encounter them. You encounter all sorts of cool animals that don't exist today in Greece because they've all been hunted. Yeah, so the oracle said that Sparta is going to be ravaged by the Persian army. Essentially, I mean, if Persia gets all the way to Sparta, Persia has won the war, right? Sparta's down here. If they got all the way there, it's game over. Or Sparta is going to be mourning a king from the line of Heracles. For the Greeks, Thermopylae was a defeat, but it was a loss that inspired hope. Persian propaganda proclaimed that the Greeks were doomed to be enslaved and killed. However, Thermopylae showed the Greeks that with clever tactics, well-trained troops, and high morale, the Persians could be beaten despite their numerical superiority. Right. Here's a Persian. Right. You can tell he's got leopard skin, so he actually might be I think they say the Ethiopians wore leather skins. Herodotus does. Who knows? And then here you get a good look inside of that loop that is helping support the shield in here. It's also interesting. Look at how he's holding the spear. We often think of an overhand strike, but here is a strike from the middle. And so because this is contemporaneous, right? Do they tell 480 to 470? Yeah, so this is contemporaneous. This shows you what the combat may have looked like. This was a defeat. Let's not bandy about it. But the defeat came at the expense of not that many lives, and it was a huge moral victory. Right? This showed that the Greeks could outmaneuver the Spartans, and that with their hoplites, they outmatched the Persians by a large proportion.
In the end, the Battle of Thermopylae was still a loss for the Greeks. However, the battle gave the Greeks a boost in morale that carried them all the way to their decisive victory over the Persians in the Battle of Plataea in 479 BCE. With the war against the Persians finally won, the Greeks were able to honor the sacrifice of Leonidas and his Spartans with memorials and poems, forever solidifying the glory of Sparta's military prowess. The newfound respect for Sparta was noteworthy, because before the war, the city was seen as no more than a bully who forced itself into the affairs of others. Thermopylae changed the opinions of Sparta for the better, and gave them a legitimate claim to be one of Greece's most powerful and influential cities.
The glory of Sparta. Yeah, so this is when we see the beginning of what is known as the Spartan Mirage, and this idea that Sparta is just superhuman. They're all superheroes and buff and amazing. Before this, they do have the Peloponnesian League, which gives them control over much of the Peloponnesus. This is going to be a hub and spoke model type alliance where all the different poleis or many of the different poleis in the Peloponnesus have an alliance with Sparta, but they don't necessarily have alliances with each other. After the Battle of Thermopylae, a monumental stele was placed on the ground where the Spartans were buried. According to Herodotus, the stele featured the following inscription: "Foreigner, go tell the Spartans that we lie here obedient to their commands." Or as I've heard it in rhyme, "Go tell the Spartans passerby that here, bound to their laws, we lie." The inscription served to remind passing visitors of the Spartans' heroic sacrifice. Interestingly, this is just a coin with Amphictyony. So the Amphictyonic League was a group of city-states in Phocis, in this area, and Boeotia. This is all Delphi here. But we're going to, as I said, hold off on that. I think we will go through a couple places in Locris after this. But yeah, so the Amphictyony is in charge of Delphi and doesn't have anything to do with the glory of Sparta.
You've finished. I hope you understand the magnitude of the sacrifices made at Thermopylae. Without them, the Greek people would have surely ended as a footnote in Persian history.
Maybe not.
Is there something else you'd like to do?
In terms of sacrifice, okay, 300 people, about, maybe more than that, 1,300 plus or helots, knowingly went to their death on the third day. Most of them signed up to truly, it was kind of a suicide mission. It was terrifying. Let's make no bones about it. But, it wasn't the biggest sacrifice we've ever heard of. And also it was a defeat, and so there was this moral victory, and it really helped, especially for the Battle of Salamis that comes later, to show the Greeks that they can win, especially with clever strategies. But, well, it's Leonidas, right? Let's give it to him. He died here.
If you think you're ready, let's begin. First question: who was Xerxes' father?
All right, chat. Who's Xerxes' father? Darius, Cyrus, Artaxerxes, or Alcibiades? I'll tell you this. Very good. It is Darius. Cyrus, founder of the Persian Empire. Artaxerxes, I believe, is Xerxes' son. Alcibiades is a playboy in classical Athens.
Yes. One of the main reasons Xerxes invaded Greece was to get revenge for Darius's defeat at the Battle of Marathon. Another question for you. Which battle is seen as the final victory against Xerxes' Persian forces?
Hint, it's the same one that came to Athens' aid at the Battle of Marathon. Battle of Thermopylae, the Battle of Marathon, Battle of Plataea, the Battle of Salamis. So it's not Thermopylae, Battle of Plataea, very good.
Correct.
And we will see Salamis.
The Battle of Plataea
in 2
helped
weeks.
put an end to Xerxes'
Or
invasion.
I guess next week on
One last
stream.
question. How many Spartans fought at the Battle of Thermopylae?
Oh, come on. This is too easy. Oh!
30 Spartans against an army of Persians.
I misclicked!
Makes for
I
an
misclicked!
exciting
Oh
story,
my god.
but also
Oh
one
my
that is
god.
untrue.
This is...
Try again.
Oh my god. This is just like... I think I'm gonna have to cancel the stream. Like, the first question I get wrong in a quiz. The first question I get wrong in the quiz is I pressed the wrong frickin' button. Oh my god.
Yes,
I resigned. This is
300
this-
of us
this
stood
is so
against
embarrassing.
Xerxes' forces.
This is like the biggest gimme
You've
in the
done
entire
well,
game.
visitor. I have no more questions for you.
Shameful. That's all for now. That's for damn sure. I'm out.
Farewell, visitor.
I can't look Leonidas in the face. That's brutal. Alright, so we could... What do we have? We've got like 20, 30 minutes. No, we got a little time left. So let's try to finish off Melis. Oh, there's just these 2 places right here. So these are going to be a few more discovery spots for the Battle of Thermopylae, I think. So they are here. We'll get some good assassins. And now that Ari's gone, 35 minutes, cool. Thank you. Let's see. Now that Ari's gone, we're going to try that new Achilles armor. Lexio's Achilles. Yeah, he looks pretty cool. And that's a very fitting outfit for Thermopylae, right? I do wonder what's here. I wonder if we're going to get a view of where all the Persian ships were wrecked by the storm. Oh no, it's just at the end of the tour that I wanted to change my armor. Cool area. So we got some ruins. Oh, and this is Herodotus. Hell yeah. Look at that guy. The Greco-Persian Wars incited the Greek Herodotus from Asia Minor to write the first work of a new literary genre, history. And so Herodotus from Halicarnassus, this is southwest modern Turkey. Herodotus exposes here his research, so that what men have accomplished does not fade from memory. Those great and wonderful exploits accomplished by both barbarians and Greeks. So we have Herodotus. The word research was previously used only in medicine to describe the search for the causes of a disease, and then came to designate a new intellectual construction, history, in the current sense of the word, highlighting the need for rigor and objectivity. Since the 5th century BC, it's thanks to the histories of Herodotus that we're able to understand the deeds of Sparta at Thermopylae. Truly, without, so the P makes an E sound. That's so interesting to see that spelling. Yeah, so without him, we would not talk about the Battle of Thermopylae at all, right? Before this time, before Herodotus, it's all black and white. It's not even black and white. It's like, the most minute of descriptions of what happens, or of what happened. And so without someone actually writing full text, the book of Herodotus that I have, full of maps and notes and everything, is over 700 pages. And so this gives us a level of detail that we have never before seen in history. So where's this last point? Whew. That is... Do not dive in the shallow end, guys. It's very dangerous. Okay, so there's no... Huh, that's so interesting. But in English it translates to D. That's crazy, that the D and the TH swap. In Spanish, similarly, D's are frequently th. An oracular decision. Upon the arrival of the Persians, the terrified Delphians consulted the oracle of Apollo. They were told to address their prayers to the winds, as they would be Greece's most powerful ally in the coming conflict. Xerxes' campaign did indeed rely heavily on coordination between land and sea forces acting in unison. During the Battle of Thermopylae, a storm cost the Persian sea armada many of its ships. Over 400 vessels were destroyed. In calm weather, these ships would likely have forced the Greeks to fight in a tactical retreat, letting Xerxes land troops south of Leonidas' position and bypass Thermopylae entirely. The cooperation of the winds led the Athenians to later construct a temple in honor of Boreas, the wind god. I think especially he's the north wind god, right? And the north winds coming down from the Hellespont are what helped them and saved them in a number of occasions during this war and that previous invasion we talked about in 492. Herothostos. Cool. Vagilis, you're making the stream so much more educational. Thank you. Alright, 4 of 5 discovery tours. Here's a cave. Cool. What's in here? I bet there's treasure that I'm not going to be able to access. If anyone knows Ubisoft, let me know. I'd love to talk to him. Whoa, this is very cool. Okay, so this is called Persian Remnants. And there are a number of stories, especially at the Battle of Salamis, where the Persian ships, the people wash up from there, and they might be butchered, depending on if they are caught by the Greeks. But yeah, so this is some cave where it looks like there is nothing. But I could imagine the Persians seeking shelter here from the storm, should they be so unlucky as to have their boats destroyed. Okay, so the Persian remnants are here. I wonder if I can I dive? No, not really. Okay, it doesn't look like there's anything I can get to. And I can't get out. There we go. Alright, so let's go find this last point in Malus, and then we can move on to the rest of focus. Ah, here it is at the very beginning, so we have to backtrack a little bit. Imagine though, so as we've talked about, this was not enough shoreline for the entire Persian fleet. It could not dock here, and so many of these ships were blown up against this cave, or sorry, not this cave, this cliff face. So as the Persians invaded, they were their navy was bringing, similarly to their army, it brought people from all over. The Sidonians and Phoenicians, I believe Sidon was actually Phoenician, were the best. They supplied the largest number. Oh boy! And here I drown in the surf. They supplied the greatest number and the highest skilled sailors in the Persian fleet, followed by the Egyptians, and then a bunch of other Ionian Greeks. Can I climb here? I finally found a ledge. That high ledge over there was finally something that this guy, Alexios, is not able to scale. And probably about 50% of all the boats were destroyed in storms, either on the way over. There's an encircling action. I do wonder if we can see Artemisia from here, but this battle is happening somewhere over here. It's not, this map is unfortunately not to scale, so it's going to be closer to Euboea. Actually, I do luckily have a map of Greece right here that I'm going to pull up, because I think this is important. So here we have Euboea. This is the Malian Gulf right here. Thermopylae is right on the inside here. So the first storm struck them in this area off the Cape of Magnesia. That's this area right here. And then as they came in, this is where Artemision happens, the battle. It's between the mainland and the northern part of Euboea. This is Thermopylae, so there is some distance, but they were in contact. This is where the holding action happens. And during this time, the Persians supposedly sent a large force out over here, and the same storm that wrecked them against this coast also wrecked them over on Euboea and led to a number of Herodotus actually says that because they weren't close to the shore, or they hadn't tried docking, or they weren't able to dock, the entire fleet was, you see it as a mirror. Ha! Well, hopefully most of these viewers are not well versed enough in Greek history to be able to tell. Oh, that's such a I need to. That's too bad that it's a mirror. I'm sorry. I'll have to flip the camera next time so that I can, if I end up showing that map again. That must have been really weird for you, Vagilis, to see your homeland flipped on a north-south axis. And here's the line of Leonidas, of course. Greeks and Trojans fighting for the body of Patroclus. Okay, so this is a scene from the Iliad. In the Iliad, Homer describes the struggles that broke out between friends and foes over who would lay claim to the remains of a fallen warrior. The death of Leonidas at Thermopylae prompted such a fight. Herodotus, who knew the Iliad well, as all ancient Greeks did, was no doubt aware that he was repeating a well-known trope. He says that two sons of Darius fell in fighting over Leonidas' corpse, and that a melee ensued between the Spartans and Persians. Leonidas' conduct at Thermopylae is comparable to the Homeric heroes of legend, and is often suggested that this conflict is as important as the Trojan War itself, at least historically. Yeah, so historically, oh, we finished Melis. Very cool. All right. Yeah, so Thermopylae, was very important, especially for the Persian Wars and the evolution of ancient Greece. The Trojan War happened in the preceding era, at the end of the Bronze Age, and so it's informed a lot of the culture of ancient Greece, but was not as important to the history that we know. Wow, that's pretty cool. Makes sense. Wait, you guys are still learning ancient Greek in Greece? I mean, that makes sense. Especially, it's so crazy to me that Greece is really a language alone in Europe. It's not related to anything else, right? Yeah, American history is, I don't know. Chaco, you say that because that's all you've ever learned, but true. I mean, yeah, Greek history is pretty great. Okay, so we're gonna follow this road. Meanwhile, so we're gonna head into focus. Let me see what we can do. Okay, so we could actually do Locris. It looks like there's only 2 discovery sites here. So let's see what's going on. Oh, yeah, here we go. So we're going to continue along this area. These are the Straits of Euboea. So up ahead in the distance, it looks like, I assume that's Euboea, this very long island that runs off the east coast of Greece. Ooh, this is cool. We've just discovered a city. Hidden in the mountains. Cool shrine. Whoa, that guy. Oh, speaking of that guy just getting completely blown over by the gods, we should. I want to talk about that. There's that Delphic little piece of interest earlier. Okay, I'm gonna get where they're not screaming and chanting. And so the Delphians, they prayed to the gods, and the Oracle of Delphi told them, what do you have to worry about, right? Obviously, I'm going to protect you. Did you not see that guy? So as I approached this temple, this guy just completely fell over. He's just blown backwards. Anyway, the Delphians, the Oracle of Apollo is don't worry about it. And supposedly, as Herodotus says, as Xerxes sends troops to march to Delphi to seize a lot of their treasure, the lightning strikes the top of Mount Parnassus and sends boulders flying directly into the truth. Who knows if that's true? I mean, if it is, like, then color me a believer in the gods. Got some more murals. And let's head into Alpanos. This is a city I know nothing about. So, I'm very excited to learn about this. We've got this classic Mediterranean white stone. Was also famous for serving as the Greek naval base during the Persian Wars. No kidding. That's interesting. Okay. Oh, cool. So we're actually going to see the creation of salt. I wonder. Naval base of the Persian in the Persian Wars. Okay, so C is dive. That's good to know. All right, chat. Let me know when I need to dive down. Please remind me of these controls. Can I please get out? Hey, fisherman, let me out. Let me out. Let me out. Oh, this guy can climb a bald cliff face, and he can't. I guess the rock is really mossy. Come on. Okay. Well, I guess we're swimming. This is cool. Yeah, so what's interesting about this, it says it's a naval base during the Persian invasion, or the Persian Wars, but this place would have very quickly gotten run over by the Persians, right? After Thermopylae in August 480, they go directly here. So it seems suspect that it was going to be the naval base for long. This was probably a naval base during the first attempt, or sorry, the first stage where they're trying to hold at Artemisium and Thermopylae. Okay, here we go. Here's salt drying. They are going to pool the briny ocean water in here. Then they pan it out. These are salt pans. They pan it out wide and let the natural evaporation take the water away and leave the salt. That's how you get sea salt. This is the Locrian banner, skater of Locris, depicting the Trojan War. Hero Ajax holding a sword and a shield decorated with a griffin on the interior. I'm amazed that this is the first typo we've seen. There's so much text in this, and they just misspelled the. The banner of Locris shows a griffin, a mythological creature with the body, legs, and tail of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle. The griffin is inspired by the Locris Apunti coinage, which depicted Ajax, the Locrian hero of the Trojan War. His shield wore a griffin on the interior side. So there's Ajax's griffin on the inside. Ajax is like the biggest, buffest, strongest guy during the Trojan War, and I believe he meets his end. He kills himself after not receiving there are funeral games after Achilles dies. Odysseus and Ajax are in the competition to get all of his gear, all of his loot, and Odysseus wins. Ajax then kills himself. Griffins were known for guarding treasure, especially if it belonged to the gods, and were a symbol of strength and vigilance. So that's the Locrian banner. And let's find the next one. So this is a production of salt. One more thing that you students could do for an economics point is talk to me about creating salt and the selling of it. Oh, this is a very nice perch. Cool. I feel like Nils, our teacher, who loves climbing trees. And where is this next point of interest? Probably. Wow, this is a huge salt production area. Where is this? It's supposed to be nearby. Oh, it's right there. Let's go check it out. So one question I have, and this is embarrassing given how much reading about Thermopylae I've done in the last week or two. I read the Herodotus, looked at all the maps, and it strikes me that how could the fleet reinforce the people at Thermopylae when they were held off at Artemisium? And so it strikes me that, and this is probably because I saw 300 as a high school kid, so it's in my mind that the people at the pass of Thermopylae watched as the Persian ships were wrecked below their feet on those cliffs that we saw. But likely the fleets were destroyed before they were able to get to Thermopylae because they were being held at Artemisium instead simultaneously. So these are two simultaneous battles. The conflict between Ajax and Odysseus was over the armor of Achilles. It's been a very long time since I read any Greek mythology, so please call me on this. But after Achilles died, all of his armor, especially his shield of Achilles, which is very famous, all this was made by the god Hephaestus for him after Patroclus had lost his armor when he was killed by Hector. So Odysseus got a whole new kit made by the god of the forge. He dies, and then Odysseus and Ajax fight over it. Odysseus, not fight, but they compete in games, funeral games, and then because Odysseus wins, Ajax is humiliated and kills himself, which is what people who are very proud do when they lose. So my attempt in class is to play games where students lose at least at some point, because you need to learn how to lose gracefully, or else you're pathetic. Not pathetic. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. But being a sore loser is a big problem, and if you can get over that in life, you're gonna have a much more successful time. You're gonna have a lot more fun. So here's Locris, more salt flats, and we're gonna check them out. Below us is Apogus. Did not pronounce that correctly. And this is the main city and capital of Locris. That's something. Look at this. Wow. They are really producing a huge amount. I love that Assassin's Creed has done this. This is very, very cool. So here are troughs to bring in the salt water. You can see even, it looks like corals are growing down there. You've got some just basic trash. Oh, can I go in? So you got like an amphora. And yeah, all this stuff is either like becoming, ooh, what are these? These are saltwater frogs? Is that a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. Achilles is a myth. Yeah, no, this whole thing is Ajax is also a mythological figure. This is a house. Did I finish Locris as well? Did I do everything in here? One of two discovery sites. Oh, I missed. Darn it. It's because, I was gonna jump. I jumped from the vantage point, the lookout point, right next to that spot that I wanted to check out, and I forgot to do it. Okay, we're gonna Alex Honnold it all the way up. Got a nice crevice here. We can scurry on up. Look at that. Maybe I use some of this salt, like chalk. Salt. Here we go. I was waiting for this. Salt harvesting was known to humankind at least from the Neolithic age, on account of the considerable quantities of fragmented ceramic molds accumulated around salt springs. There were two main ways of collecting salt. The first one was to simply harvest it where it was accessible, that is, near salt lakes, marshes, or near the sea. Pans were used to let collected water evaporate in the sun and then harvest the resulting salt. That's what we've been seeing, is these big salt pans. The other method was extracting it from the earth. This was difficult in mainland Greece since the soil did not provide much yield in this fashion. Collecting salt from water was therefore much more utilized. We know for sure that salt played a role in magic. Ooh, this took a turn for the interesting. For example, eating salty cakes on a special day was thought to allow young girls to dream of their future husbands. It was also used in some religious practices. Even in Homeric times, salt was offered to the gods and used when sacrificing animals and making libations. Furthermore, salt played an important part in some Greek festivals, such as the Eleusinian Mysteries, celebrated in the town of Eleusis in Attica to honor Demeter, the goddess of the crops, and her daughter Persephone. Salt and the Kikaon, which was a hallucinogenic potion. I was just talking about the Eleusinian Mysteries today. I think that would have been one of the coolest things both to witness, to participate in, but also something that I'd love to bring back, an initiation that, as far as we know, kind of mirrors or teaches people how to die. Fictional, fierce pirate leader. Um, yeah, pirate leader, pirate queen. Is there Artemisia? So Artemisia is a woman uh, whose husband had been the tyrant of an Ionian town. Her husband dies. She takes power, and she becomes a basically pirate queen. And she is one of the best commanders that Xerxes has in this invasion. So if anyone wants to do a one-page write-up on Artemisia, I will let you play her in this invasion. Here's a statue of Hermes with his caduceus winged hat. Does he have a winged hat or winged sandals? I think winged sandal. He has a winged hat. The winged sandals come from the myth of Perseus. She's huge. How do you mean? Are you talking about Artemisia? Yeah, she's super cool. Also played by one of my favorite actresses in 300, the sequel, which is all about Salamis. Ava Green. She's great. Do not watch these movies if you want anything close to historical accuracy. I say, before we do a group reading of 300 tomorrow. But that's mostly just to do a little literary criticism, I think. Can I get on the roof? Okay, so I've finished Locris. And, let's see. Let's go here, and we might do Euboea next. Euboea is going to be the site of that battle of Artemision, right? So Artemision is the battle. Artemisia is the pirate queen. And I say pirate queen because it sounds awesome, but she's actually just like a normal queen who's got a badass navy. And at the battle, I'll wait for the Battle of Salamis to talk about her. So here we are in Euboea, Istea Peak. So off of here, this is, if we're looking north, somewhere in this fictional game world that's not to scale, is the Battle of Artemision. And so the next thing that we do, yeah, I think this might be the time to do Euboea. So let's take a look. Euboea is long allied with Athens. In fact, through the system of clerices, Euboea is kind of colonized by Athens. So clerices are missions of citizens. I only hear of them in having taken place or going from Athens, where the clerics, the people who form this mission, retain their citizenship status. Whereas most colonies, they are independent, and they have some tie to the metropolis, but they are new citizens. The Hind of Chaeronea. So this is going to be a labor of Heracles. The third labor of Heracles was to capture the Chaeronean hind, a beast notoriously faster than an arrow. This particular labor was not about strength, but about speed and patience. Heracles chased the hind on foot for over a year in Thrace, and as far as Istria in the Adriatic Sea. However, there's more than one legend that tells of his capture. In one version, Heracles caught the hind when it was asleep with a trap net or a thrown arrow. In another, it was Artemis, whose sacred animal was the hind. So when we saw that statue of Artemis at the beginning, she had the hind there. This is just a deer, essentially, who helped Heracles after he told the goddess that he didn't intend on desecrating the animal. So here's Heracles desecrating the animal, and here may be Artemis, or at least someone with a bow. Euboea is connected to Attica. How do you mean? It's not connected by land, or is there, there is this area, I forget what it's called. This is not, no, it's unfortunately not going to tell me. So I think it's like the Europos. I don't know. I just read this in Herodotus today. But it's incredibly close, Euboea and Attica. But yeah, so the Athenians, during the Peloponnesian War at least, Euboea was essentially a colony, and this is an area where much of their food is coming from. They're getting their grain both from the Black Sea, but also Euboea, and it starts in Euboea, or at least their grain imports start from Euboea because that's of course much closer. Cool, you can go by car from Attica to Euboea. Man, I love having your modern Greek perspective in here. That's really cool. Cool, so here's a farm in Chalkis. Okay, so Chalkis is going to be the large Euboean city that's at that point that's that's very close to Attica. So I imagine, yeah, dude, my horse is as immortal as I am. Luckily, otherwise I would have gone through a lot of horses. These poor knees would be shattered. I'm reading War and Peace right now, and there's a scene where a bunch of aristocrats are talking about how many horses they kill over the course of a night. It's really awful. Them talking so blasely, like, oh yeah, I was so fast, I was trying to get there so quickly that I killed 3 horses that night. Here's a stage. This is a wooden stage. We've seen a couple that are carved directly into the mountainside. And here are the behind the scenes parts of the play. I imagine in Athens, at least, there's a full tour of a dramatical, a theater. Sorry, not a dramatical place. Dramatical place is my room on Saturday afternoons. So Chalkis, we're gonna head to the highest point. We're gonna get a little survey. Renowned for its metalworking and bronze weapon manufacturing, Chalkis was likely to fall away from Athens during the Peloponnesian War and had to sign a treaty swearing loyalty to them. So yeah, as I mentioned, they essentially become a client state of Athens, and they are incredibly important because Athens is not self-reliant when it comes to food, right? They are importing a lot. And so if Euboea falls away from the Delian League, they're in big, big trouble. Drama. So we'll do a little exploring. I imagine that I'm going to come back here in a month or 2 when we hit the Peloponnesian War. In here we have a temple to Poseidon, which makes sense, given that they are a seafaring nation. They're on an island, of course. Beautiful area. Here we have another altar with a view. Let's see what we can find. We're going to do some breaking and entering into someone's house. Beautiful house. I love these open atria that they have, where part of your house is outside. Someone's talking about Athena, if you could hear that. Let me try to find some more points of interest. So Chalkis is going to get more important. I think I'll hit this point of interest. I'll go to Jorgo's Reach. That's probably not the right way of pronouncing it. And then I think I'm going to call it quits. Yeah, so I am hoping... I think maybe next time, maybe on Tuesday, I'll do some Total War, and the Battle of Artemision, because the Greeks were so outnumbered, we actually have a record of the strategy that the Greeks employed under Themistocles. I'm going to try that out on Total War, because I want to see if it's going to work. I'm terrible at the naval battles in the ancient world in Total War, and so I think it would be a good attempt to try. What Themistocles did is he arranged all the triremes in a circle, so they had their prows facing out and their sterns all in the center, and so then then they could kind of like jut out. They captured a lot of vessels. I don't know how they captured them in the ancient world so well without making their own boats vulnerable. But the Athenian and Greek ships were going to be heavier and used to ram into the Persian vessels, where the Persian vessels were typically going to try to get close, maybe board or shoot arrows. Yeah, so that's Athena. Very cool. And so is that first all in caps, and then the second one with the lowercase letters? The cool. Okay, so theta is th, and delta makes a the. How do you know? How did you learn English, Vagilist? Here's a statue of Poseidon. The bronze statue of Poseidon at the Archaeological Museum of Athens depicts either Zeus or Poseidon. Huh. It is one of the few remaining original bronze statues from Greece's classical period, but it is also one of the most impressive. And yet we don't have a picture of it. Oh, that's heartbreaking. Give me a picture of one of the only remaining bronze statues from the classical period. Like, please. The statue depicts a thick-bearded, curly-haired god with a muscular, well-detailed anatomy. It's missing its eyes, which were made of a different material, perhaps semi-precious stone or glass. The statue's right hand clutched either a lightning bolt, if it depicted Zeus, or a trident, if it depicted Poseidon. For the purpose of the game, we decided it was Poseidon. Cool. The sculpture was made by an artist of great skill. It's possible it was created by the renowned sculptor Calamus. And here's a vase painting of Poseidon holding a fish. I haven't seen him holding a fish before. I know you learn English. Of course you do. When do you start? You're also learning Ancient Greek. Is that the main language? That probably it would make sense if your native language is as little spoken as Greek. It would make sense that you learn English. And as a native English speaker, let me tell you, I love that. Makes going to Europe very easy. Apparently, the most common conversation being had at any given time is two non-native English speakers speaking English to each other. But I think even though I'm horribly biased as a native English speaker, I think it's good that the world has a lingua franca that allows us to communicate, especially online, between people of many different cultures. So here is going to be a small shrine, potentially to Poseidon. I think we're going to go to Cape Sunion, or we actually did that last week, didn't we? Cape Sunion, where there is a statue of Poseidon. Okay, let's get up here. Can you please mount the rostra? There we go. Learning a language at the age of 7. Let me tell you, in America, we start learning a language poorly at age like 13. And we're not very good at it. At roughly 1, you think? Jaka, I think we just say that you learned that from your parents. Yeah, that's amazing that you guys learn a foreign language in school starting so early. That's really the only way to do it. Which enables you to write in English, essentially flawlessly, as far as I can tell, in our little bit of interaction. So here we have some fishing wharves. Look at those big tuna. Oh man. Ships. Ooh, look. Let's check these out. So here we have triremes, right, with the beaks. Here is a lambda, so a Lacedaemonian or Spartan trireme. Haha, they didn't really have them. Here's an Athenian trireme. Interesting. It's much, it's like sleeker, really. And here, who knows? Is this a Locrian? Is this the griffin? Does anyone know what this is? The Greeks have long been known as a naval powerhouse. The development team created multiple ship models covering the trireme with 3 rows of oars. Here, we looked at that last week with the bireme with 2. Merchant ships and other smaller boats. Historical pop culture sources, including a visit to a life-size replica of a trireme, 3rd century BCE graffiti, depictions on vases and stone relief, and movies like Hercules 1958, Jason and the Argonauts 1963, and many others, all serve to inform the design team to create realistic and functional digital replicas of these classic ships. The color and animal-based designs of the ships are also significant. To the far right, the Athenian ship is clear, not just from its blue coloring, but also the owl adorning its sail. The owl being the symbol of wisdom associated with Athena, the protector goddess of Athens. In the center is a darker colored ship common among pirates. To the left, a Spartan ship, and in the far left, the smaller and less streamlined ship is a fishing boat. Let's see, to the far right. Oh, this is a pirate ship, I guess. Common among pirates. 3D renders of the figureheads featured in Odyssey range from the proud Griffin and Pegasus to the terrible Hydra and Medusa. So here are the figureheads that we might see along the boats. All right. I think with that, I'll sign off. I wonder. I was just, as I was reading that ship description, I was already thinking about how I could have made um, that Thermopylae tour better. So I may record a special Thermopylae, do the tour again, and insert. I was realizing like they didn't talk about any of the Laconian phrases. You know, the Spartan or the Persian emissary who comes up and says, you know, this is your last chance. Lay down your weapons. And the Spartans respond, Molon Labe, come and take them. And Vagilus, you'll be happy to know, maybe, that that's the only Greek you'll ever see in the United States. Is we've got Molon Labe, and it's all the people with guns in America being like, come and take them. And then you've got we saw a little bit about the Spartans combing their hair, looking pretty. Our arrows will blot out the sun. Then we shall fight in the shade, Dionysius says, etc. So, we'll see. I'll think about it. Maybe I'll do just like a YouTube special, just Battle of Thermopylae, and do that again. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. I'll see many of you tomorrow. Vagilus, thank you so much for tuning in. You add a lot. I appreciate it. Till next one is going to be Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Stay strong, y'all.